nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Here he comes. One, if you take roll call, please.
Yes, Director Stump,
Present.
President Ratterman,
Here.
Director Dean,
Yeah, here.
Director Dooley,
Here.
and Director Davidson is absent.
He's pulling into the parking lot, so he'll be here in a minute. Okay, thank you. Item number 2 on our agenda is public comment. At this time, members of the public may address the board on any non-agendized item. The public is encouraged to work through staff to place items on the agenda for board consideration. No action can be taken on matters not listed on the agenda. Comments are limited to 5 minutes per person. Any public comment today? Seeing none, move on to consent agenda. We have nothing to report on our consent agenda. Old business, 4A, update on water conservation efforts. Joel Metzger, Community/Customer Service Relations Manager. Good morning, Joel.
Good morning. So since June, we've been under stage 3 mandatory conservation, and a lot has happened since then, but it's very encouraging things have happened. Mainly, there's been a significant reduction among the water production, which means that our users are using less. I believe that that is a direct result of the campaign that we all have worked on to educate and inform our customers about why they need to conserve and how to conserve. So I'm going to go through a number of things today to update you on our conservation efforts. Just to take a look at how the state's doing as a whole first, this is the U.S. Drought Monitor. The last one posted was on the 14th of October. And it really hasn't changed too much over the last few months. We're still in an exceptional state of drought, and most of the state is in a very bad way right now. So this won't change until we get some rains, and we're all hoping for those, and that will be a consistent theme of this presentation as we really, really need a good winter this year. So just a recap of stage 3. This was put into place by your board in response to curtailments by the state of post-1914 water right holders. The board put mandatory conservation measures in place on the 11th of June, and you'll see in this graph coming up that there was a really clear response by our customers right after this happened. This affects about 12,700 water account holders, and that translates to roughly 30,000 people served, which is the majority of our county. After significant and ongoing outreach efforts that we all have been part of as a team to educate and inform the customers, we've achieved a 22.5% reduction district-wide in the month of September compared to 2013. This is the best that we've done so far this year, so we continue to step it up. Although the last 3 months have been very close, all in the 22% range. Year to date, CCWD customers have reduced water use by 18.3%, which is also a very admirable number. This is a line graph which kind of shows how we've done this year compared to last year, year to date. So starting in January, we already had conservation going on. I believe that's the result of the governor and others saying we are in the 3rd year of a drought, calling for people to be wise about their water use. And actually, even before we put stage 3 into place, we had some very significant reductions here. But then in June, which is when the stage 3 went into place, we are starting to go up towards summer. A lot of people use a lot more water. But right after June, in July, you see that huge drop. And as water use usually goes up, we had to go down. So I think that's a very significant accomplishment. And then since we put these into place, we've hovered around 22%. For each month since then. And again, we have an 18% year-to-date reduction number. Just to kind of give you a visual on the drought, I think that New Maloney's reservoirs are a really good way to kind of put it into perspective. This is looking off the Carrots Ferry Bridge. The reservoir is down significantly. You can see a lot of trees popping back up. You can even see the old road that used to cross the old bridge working its way down there. This was taken in September. And this is one from a slightly different angle of the same area. This was taken in October. And it's just amazing. Even little islands are appearing in there. This reservoir is way, way down. And I think this really reminds people every day they cross that bridge of what we're dealing with right now.
I think I see my sunglasses.
So Larry later is going to be given a report about the status of curtailment. In order to kind of prepare you for that, I wanted to give you a little overview of the reservoirs as part of this presentation. Just another reason why we need to conserve. So where does our water come from? The McCollum River, the Calaveras, the Stanislaus, and Wells. Two of those rivers are rather large and have a good snow pack that feeds them. The Calaveras is mainly wave fed. And the wells seem to be doing very well. It's very difficult to know what leads to wells doing well or not doing well because the underground network is very complicated. So the reservoirs are kind of can be a good measure of how we're doing with our water supply. But we can only capture water in the reservoirs when we're allowed to. And right now, if we're under curtailment, we have to let water that comes into the reservoirs that we use pass through. And so Larry's going to go into that in a little more detail on what the latest guidance the state has given us about capturing water. But some of the reservoirs that might affect us in the McCollum watershed would be Salt Springs, Tiger Creek, Shads, Jeff Davis, Party, and Comanche. Calaveras watershed, we have White Pines and New Hogan. New Hogan is especially important. And then on the Stanislaus, we have Spicer, Utica, Union, McKay's, New Maloney's, and Tulloch. So I'm just going to show you some snapshots of a couple of these to kind of show you what we're working with right now. Let's start at the very top. I don't know if you guys are aware, but the source of the McCollum and Stanislaus rivers are two lakes that are right next to each other. This is Lower Highland Lake, and this is the source of the McCollum. I was up there not long ago, and it was still rather full and looking good.
Stanislaus or the?
Lower Highland goes to the McCollum, and then the Stanislaus comes from Upper Highland. Both of these lakes look good. And then as you move down the watersheds on the Stanislaus, we have Spicer Meadow Reservoir. It is currently at 68,000 acre feet, and it has a capacity of 190,000 acre feet. So it's at 36% capacity. That's a very important reservoir for us. And nearby are Union and Utica reservoirs, which were down significantly last time I was up in the area. Coming down to the Maloney's on the Stanislaus, it's at 529,000 acre feet of a potential 2.4 million at 22% capacity. So that's very, very down. White Pines is something that we're monitoring because it does feed our Sheep Ranch supply down the San Antonio Creek watershed. And at this point, we are still taking White Pines water and piping it into Sheep Ranch. But at some point, we may need to truck water if the turbidity gets to a point where we can't treat it to state standards. So we're keeping a close eye on that. And then Hogan is one that a lot of people see down in the Valley Springs area. The old dam is clearly visible here as the water recedes more and more. It's at 41,000 acre feet of a possible 317 at 13% capacity. This is going to get us through the winter without a problem. However, if we don't get a good winter, we could face some challenges with Hogan next summer, especially when we have our needs for supplying water to our customers and then we have irrigation needs downstream. And this is just a view of the regulator up in West Point. I don't know if any of you have seen this before, but this supplies West Point with its water off of Bear Creek until it gets low, and then we eventually switch over to this, which is the Middle Fork diversion. This is water that we purchase from CCWD out of the Shads Reservoir. So we just make a low head dam, and we stick a perforated pipe in there, and that's what a diversion looks like to get the water out. And that status of Shads seems to be good. We're not having any big worries about that. At this point, we're the only user. CCWD isn't using Shads water. So that's kind of an overview of some of the reservoirs. Again, Larry's going to talk more about curtailment during his report. But in terms of conservation, all of these levels kind of tell us how important this is and what a grave situation the state is facing. Very visual evidence of that. So what does CCWD need to do? I think we need to continue to educate and inform our customers and make sure that they understand how to conserve, and also pass on that it's not necessarily just CCWD that is making these decisions. It's really the state is making decisions that just pass down to CCWD, and then we are making decisions based on those things. And I think that message needs to be clear to our customers. I also think it's important that we continue to look for new ways to incentivize conservation, and I think a rebate program is a good part of that, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. And then another thing that we can do is we can look to fix leaks in the worst of our pipes, and I think that's a big part of why we're spending millions of dollars on our capital R&R program. We can conserve a significant amount of water just by replacing our infrastructure. As part of conservation, we have to report how we're doing to the state. We have to do that each month, and I'm taking the lead on that. So on the 15th, I send a report that kind of looks like this. This is just an outline. We report what stage of water restrictions we've implemented, so we're under stage 3 right now. Whether the conservation plan includes irrigation restrictions for outdoor watering, which it does. The total monthly potable water production, the percent of residential use, we're at about 96% residential right now. The total population served, how many gallons of water each person uses per day, and that was just required on this last report, it hadn't been required previously. And then how much recycled water we're able to use. And we do a really good job of using recycled water, mainly due to our ability to get water to golf courses in the county.
Question.
Yep.
Do you have any idea of the number of the population that we serve?
Right now, according to our urban water management plan, we're serving around 31,000 people in the county.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. So I wanted to break down how the conservation has been playing out by service area. So this is looking at August 1st, and this is again 2014 as compared to 2013. So we have seen Sheep Ranch do exceptionally well in August with a 39% reduction. And then West Point, 24%, Ebbets Pass, 22%, and Jenny Lynn, Copperopolis, and Wallace all in the low 20s. So very, very good numbers by everyone there. And then coming over to September with conservation, again, September 2014 versus 13. Not quite as good, but still looking strong. Ebbets Pass took the lead at 26.4, and then all the others are in the low 20s in the middle there. And then we have West Point down to 12%. It's kind of tough to know why different service areas can do so well and not as well, but there are many, many different factors involved in that. I guess the main thing is that we still are well into the negatives, and we're still doing better than a lot of other regional customers in other water districts. This is the chart I showed you earlier, just to give you that visual on the general line of how we've been doing each month. Just to give you a state perspective, this is what the data that I give to the state each month is used for in part. They take data from water districts all over the state, and in May, water use was up, and I imagine the governor had some consternation when he saw that people weren't listening to him, but through many efforts in June, July, and August, statewide conservation has gotten better and better. So it's definitely moving in the right direction. So kind of looking forward a little bit, I take a lot of phone calls each day, and so does my team up front. A lot of people say, well, when are we going to get back to normal? Or when can I start growing my normal garden and doing my normal things? And I think that one thing I'm trying to tell people is we want you to be able to grow your garden and have your orchard and your lawn and everything, but some of these water conservation measures, which have kind of been forced upon people during this drought emergency, they make a lot of sense. And so I'm trying to encourage people to kind of change their perspective on some of the ways they use water. And it's not just because of a drought that you need to be smart about water use. You can do that regardless of whether there's a drought or not, just to be a good citizen. So while we may not require mandatory restrictions once this drought is over, we will continue to encourage smart water use. And I hope some of that smart water use includes taking these practices to heart and moving forward with them. So for the foreseeable future, we're going to most likely stick with stage 3 mandatory water conservation. I know that the days are getting shorter, people aren't using as much water, and we certainly are very aware of some of the challenges that these restrictions present, and we're definitely working with people, but we're continuing to enforce the stage 3 conservation even though we're well into fall now. If the winter rains come and the state gives us additional guidance, your board may need to consider either lifting or modifying these restrictions, but at this point we haven't received anything from the state along those lines. So I will continue to work with my team to educate the public and make sure that everyone's aware of these restrictions and increase our conservation outreach efforts. This will include getting into schools. That's something that's near and dear to my heart, and when I have the time and when I have the support from Larry and others, I want to get into the schools and continue the outreach efforts that we've been doing with young people. And at the next board meeting on the 12th of next month, I'm going to bring a set of conservation rebate program ideas to you for consideration. And just to give you a preview of those, these are some of the rebates that we're looking into. Smart irrigation controllers, converting sprinklers to drip systems, a landscape survey where we would go in and look at the existing irrigation systems and give recommendations, high efficiency washing machines and dishwashers. We already have a low flow toilet program, but we might expand that to doing shower heads and maybe even some sink aerators. And the source of funds would come from the water conservation portion of the Water Resources Departmental budget. We do have a significant amount of money in there, and I would like to make sure that we're using that money to promote rebates. But there's one other thing that I would leave you with this presentation, is that we may have another dry winter. In fact, there's a good likelihood that we're going to have another dry winter. And I feel it's very important that we are prepared for that. We can't just wait until it's too late and then kind of deal with it then. We need to be very thoughtful and intentional about getting ready for what could be a very difficult situation next summer. So if the rains don't come and the state cracks down harder on CCWD, and we may have to go to stage 4, which is a much more stringent restriction, it may be a very, very difficult and challenging situation. So I would just encourage us all to try to get the community to be our partner in facing this drought and come together and not have any kind of division between us and our customers. And I think the important part about that is letting them know exactly why we have to do the things we do and explain and be transparent. And I think that the community will get on board even more, as they already have this last summer, on facing this drought together. Again, if anyone has any questions, you can contact me here. And if the board has any questions, I can take them at this time.
On the conservation rebate program that you're going to be taking from Water Resources budget, what's the total amount of money available?
Right now, we have about $13,500 remaining in that budget. We have spent that down to some extent using toilet rebates.
So it'll be on a first come, first served basis.
That's right.
Any other questions for Joel?
I just had a suggestion. When we talk about the water conservation, the first thing I get from people is, I'm using so much, I'm using a lot less water, but I'm still paying the same. And I think what we have to do is talk about our fixed costs here and how using less water isn't necessarily less expensive. In fact, it's costly to the district to use less water. So I think we need to be, along with the education about conservation, we need to talk about the fixed costs that are associated with it. And also, I was glad that you brought up the fact that these rationing measures, were brought to us, and that we're trying to do. We didn't just go with a cookie cutter response. We try to do something practical within our county. And I mean, I just heard on the radio yesterday where City of San Diego finally adopted stage 2 water rationing. Actually, they actually don't have the rules yet, but they did. The city council finally yesterday said that they were going to begin water rationing. And I'm one of those people that gets frustrated that we're saving water. I mean, we're in a critical stage to save it for ourselves, but primarily the reason we're saving it is for people downstream. And so it's a little frustrating. But I just want to see a well-rounded approach about not just the necessity to save the water, but the economics of how we are required to pay for things. We don't lay people off because people are using less water. So that's just a suggestion.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Well, there's an old saying that if you don't give them the water, they're going to move up here.
I'm all for it.
I haven't heard that old saying.
There goes
All right.
the neighborhood.
All right, any public comment? Any questions for Joel? Bertha?
I have a couple of questions and a suggestion, please. First of all,
Bertha, can you come to the microphone, please? Thank you.
in your analysis of the use of water up in Heaven's Pass, for example, I want you to remember that how many second homeowners we have up there. So when you have that decrease, everybody's gone home. Not everybody. We still have a few shopping in Big Trees Market, but that, accounts for that. I really would like to know what we're saying is the use per customer, how many gallons are we using? And I don't know if you have that handy. But a suggestion came up, we have these rebates that we're gonna be offering for low flow toilet and what have you. I think it would be a wonderful idea if you went out and talked to the different business owners. You know, the ones, Middleton's, whoever is out there, and see what they can do for you. Because I know that last time, Bobby Middleton always said, well, when are we gonna get some of that money? You know, we could work with CCWD and offer low flow toilets or low shower heads or what have you. So I think it would be just a really good investment for you to go out to the different business owners and find out. It'll take time, of course, but I think it would be well worth it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
This is not gonna do rebates and they just can't.
Good morning. My name is Peter Race. I'm from General N. And just for educating me, I'm just in front of foreigner, but I noticed there was some water allocations, but I haven't heard anything about the percentage of the available water, how it's being divided. I heard about residential human use. I know there was a cutback on farms. And what percentage is the smelt, the fish, of the available water? How is that being divided? I mean, everybody's getting a cut back. Does anybody has any idea of the available water that's being provided? It's being divided. What percentage goes to what? Human resources, the farmer, agriculture, and there's a small amount goes to the maintain the fish. Does
Well, you just mentioned that 96% of the water here in Calvert County is for domestic supply.
No, I'm talking, this is a statewide issue, okay?
Right, and that's one of the frustrating things that I think Larry, I thought I heard Larry was gonna talk about the whole curtailment. Right now, we're not, the floodgates are open, so we're not
Yes.
storing any water right now. It's
But
very
what-
frustrating.
I can understand it, and I kind of know the answer, okay? But I just wondered if you folks want to make it publicized and say, the amount of water that's being made available to the people in California, what percentage goes to the residents, human being, the farms for agriculture, and the rest of it is being flushed down for the benefit of whatever fish happens to be extinct right now. So I would love to have that. Another one is that, now we've been having this drought for the past 3 years. But I haven't heard any kind of plans, what we're gonna do, or what any of the agencies, not just you folks, but the board of supervisors and the rest of the state, to prepare for something like that. How is that gonna be? I mean, I heard this occurs every couple of years, but any plans in case it happens again? Is there any thoughts how we're gonna do it if it does happen? Let's say we're gonna get big rain next week or next month, end of the year. But what we're gonna do to prepare for the next drought?
Peter, this is a state issue. We've got plenty of water for Calaveras County.
I know you haven't used a good percentage of the 25% that's
But
sitting
we don't get to control it. If the governor says that you're going to open the gates and let it flow down the river, that's water that would be for our residents that we have to watch leave. It's out of our control. The state controls it. So, I mean, as far as making plans, we're as conservative as possible as far as releases are concerned. But if the state says open the gates, we have to open the gates.
Well, and also, I think one of the things that's important to realize is, you know, for at least a decade now, we've been trying to work on a redundant supply from McCollum. And that's something I think is very important to the west end of the county in particular, is that we're able to get some McCollum River water to supplement us in these times of drought.
You got my support on that deal, okay? Because East Bay Mud is securing water for themselves. After all the BS gone, it's for the benefit of East Bay. I don't care who wants to float their fat butts down the river, okay? That money is for East Bay. Okay, let's be straight on that, okay? But I haven't heard, and if it's, hey, we gotta do what the governor wants, then what the hell you guys are doing there? Thank you.
Thank you.
Here's another thing, I think about 80% of water that's used in, that's between I think it's 80/20. 20% of the state's water goes to residential and about 80% goes to agriculture. I've heard
No,
those.
no, you're off, sir.
On what?
You're off.
Well, the-
Okay, let's move this on.
Why'd you ask?
Minus.
Why did you ask that?
My answer is about 20% goes to human residents, about 30% goes to farming, and the rest of it goes to keep the alowites, not a smelt you call it over here, the smelt, to keep the smelt happy. I just wonder how many of those people, how many of those fish are gonna be registered to vote? Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any further comments or questions for Joel? For Mr. Metzger? All right, thank you, Joel. Very, very informative. Okay, we're going to move on to 5A, new business. Update on annual high school senior scholarship program. Mr. Metzger.
Yes, good morning again. Wanted to give you an update on our scholarship program. I've received letters of intent from 3 high schools in the area, includes CHS, Bret Harte, and Mountain Oaks. And they all would like to know if we're going to give scholarships out, which the board has approved on an ongoing basis. And so I did let them know that yes, we are going to offer 2 $500 scholarships to graduating seniors. That these scholarships will be awarded in the spring of next year, and we will be evaluating essays that they submit. The essays are going to focus on water in Calaveras County as they have in the past, and specifically with these essays, they're going to be looking into how the drought is affecting the county, how water conservation is being used in the county, and what the future of water might hold as we move through possibly more drought years. So once those essays are submitted, they will be judged by a committee of staff, and we'll choose 2 winners. And once they're selected, then your board will present the scholarship awards to the student, both students here. There is also an opportunity for board members or staff to possibly attend the award ceremonies at the school itself, if anyone's interested in that, and we'll make sure that you're aware of that. The point of this scholarship is that the district believes in supporting young people, especially in their pursuit of water-related things. And we hope that even in researching and writing these essays, they may discover more about water and learn about the water system and maybe take an interest or a fascination in working in the water industry at one point. And I know that Director Davidson, when we awarded 2 scholarships earlier to these 2, said, you know, I hope that you one day come back and work for the district. And I think that would be fantastic. You know, it would be really neat if this scholarship program piqued someone's interest and then maybe 10, 20 years down the road they actually work for us. So that's kind of the intent and the
What
goal.
is that about when you plan to retire? Or?
Yeah, I think so. Maybe 30 years sooner.
10 or 20 years, I gotta wait a while.
And you know, both these 2 who were awarded earlier this year did a fantastic job on the essays, and it was really neat to interact with the schools and the teachers and the recipients. So I think it's a great program. I'm really proud that we're offering this, and I look forward to presenting the winning essays to you next spring.
Question, you got 3 schools, 2 awards. Now, what happens, or is it permissible for one school to get both awards?
That is permissible. We're judging strictly on the best 2 essays.
Okay, so it doesn't have to be one from Calaveras and one from Bret Harte, or?
No, because if we did that, we'd probably have to offer 3 so they each could get 1. So the way it's worked is the 2 best essays, those people win, and they could both be from the same high school.
Okay, so you don't know who's, or do you know in advance which school each essay came from?
When they do submit the essay, we would know what school they came from. We'd know some information about the student.
Okay.
Well, I was going to ask the same question, but I think to be truly competitive, it might not be a bad idea to mask the identities and judge it just on the essay rather than the fact that you know that, well, we have one here from Bret Harte and another one from Calaveras or Mountain Oaks.
I imagine that we could certainly do that. Maybe one person would have all the information, but those judging would only see the essay itself and not have any information other than that.
I'd like to see you consider that. I mean, that way I think it would be really fair. No political consequences.
Okay, any further comments on this item? Any public comment on this item?
Peter Ray's gentleman, I'm gonna be the Scrooge, or Christmas Scrooge.
Yeah.
When he says "we," does that mean you folks gonna put in your pension, part of your pension to, because I have an impression that the district is not
Either they can
exactly.
have all my pension. You can have all.
You can have all my pension too.
Okay. And
And
your
my overtime
expenses,
as well.
and your expenses and everything. Please, don't interrupt me for a second. I was an impression that the district is not exactly doing too good financially. All I
Is
know-
this comment related at all to the scholarship program, Peter?
Yes, sir, it will be.
Okay.
If just, please, hold on to that. So, you borrowing money, it's very nice, and it's good PR to give the scholarships out. You're gonna tell those kids they're getting borrowed money on their behalf, that they make you look good to give them a scholarship. I mean, it's very nice PR, and I'm sure the people are gonna appreciate it on TV. But you borrowing money to make yourself look good. And it's not really fair to those kids because they're not being informed that they're gonna end up paying for it, of your generosity and the ratepayers. There's people having a hard time paying for the water bills. So, I mean, it's great, I'm all supporting, reach in your pocket and pay for it. But you're not gonna get any brownie points to borrow money to make yourself look good. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comment? Right. Thank you very much, Joel.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 6, committee reports. Do you have any committees to report here today? Engineering, finance, legislation. Okay, seeing none, move on to item 7, legislative update. Do we have a legislative update today?
Nothing here, Scott.
Okay, nothing from our general manager, anything? Okay, seeing none. Going to go to item 8 on our agenda is reports. Larry Diamond, interim general manager. Anything to report, Larry?
Just a few comments, follow up on what Joel said earlier on curtailment. The board's aware that earlier in the summer, the state curtailed diversions of all the post-14 rights, or CCWD has a substantial amount of post-14 water. What that meant, we were not allowed to further divert into storage or consume those post-14 rights. And so essentially what we've been doing is, for instance, in the Ebbets Pass and Copper areas, we've been using water that was diverted to storage prior to curtailment, carryover water, or water that was diverted before curtailment was imposed. Down in New Hogan, it's a little bit of a different situation. The Bureau of Reclamation actually holds the water right, and we have a federal water contract there for the water. So we're subject to whatever restrictions, restraints imposed by the Bureau or Army Corps or Stockton East as the water master. There's a number of layers to go through there. And Joel reported on water availability in that sense. We've since received a notice which at least takes a small step in answering a lot of water agency questions in the state. Curtailment was initially imposed for a period of 270 days, which would put us through, well, essentially the rainy season and snow melt. This new notice says curtailment is going to be lifted and then reimposed on a storm-by-storm basis. They're going to send out email notifications saying, and I haven't seen it work yet, so I'm not sure exactly how it's going to work. We're going to get an email notice that says you can divert for a certain period, then we're going to receive another email notice saying stop diverting. We'll be obliged to provide daily accounting, and probably more importantly, is we're not to violate the seniority of any other rights in making those kinds of diversions. I think some of you realize how complicated that is.
Yeah, how many people were you gonna hire to do that?
Well, we do have a model on the Upper Stanislaus that assists us in accounting, but it takes a lot of inputs from a lot of data points. And there's a lot of different holders with various seniorities on the various forks of the Stanislaus. It's a trick. It is a real exercise.
Who's gonna monitor that? Is it the responsibility of the other diverters to say, wait, CCWD diverted water that should have been ours, or is it gonna be the state that's gonna make that determination?
I think, well, ultimately, the state makes the determination on the appropriate use of water under the state permits. But it's the responsibility of the respective water entities to be aware of whether they're diverting their own water, essentially, or diverting somebody else's water to storage. It's created a real complex situation for us.
Has NCPA determined how they're going to actually do the diversions? Or is this hydro water, is this?
When it's hydro, it's passed through, and it's really not subject to curtailment if it returns to the water course. That was one of the exceptions to curtailment. On the hydro side, it's not being consumed, it's being returned. So it's not violating someone's right to continued use downstream.
I was basically asking, are they going to bump up now that this is going to change per storm? Is that going to change their way of generation, their model for generation?
It has that potential. Yeah, if you can't divert to storage.
How can the state override the FERC rules?
I don't know that they're overriding the FERC rules. Things like minimum flow requirements under FERC are still in effect.
So you're saying that they're expecting to have us under curtailment for 9 months of the year?
That's the period of time that they put into effect early this summer. Yeah. And there's a lot of comments very similar comments from other water agencies. We have a bit of a lack of clarity on how this is all going to function, or not.
Just out of curiosity, what percentage of water do we normally get in that 3-month period of time that we will potentially be allowed to store water?
Well, the bulk of the water that we would normally receive falls during the curtailment period. So how this is going to work with snow melt is particularly confusing. I mean, I could kind of get my head around, all right, turning the switch on and off during a rainstorm if you have a rain-fed watershed, perhaps like the Calaveras. You have a certain period of time for all that rainwater to go from the furthest spot to that point of concentration, that's Hogan Reservoir. But when it snows and it sits up there for months, I'm not sure what the state's going to do to accommodate diversions to storage under snowmelt runoff. Just don't have the answers to that yet.
They didn't even address it.
It doesn't seem to have been addressed. No, the notice just says storm by storm,
Yeah.
and that's all we know at the moment.
I thought the state created some relief when several agencies asked if they could capture water if it occurred before the 1st of November, or something like that. I know NID brought that up as an issue.
Well, people were bringing this up as soon as curtailment was imposed. They started thinking ahead. Well, when the rain starts, what's going to happen? And some agencies came out and said they're going to divert irrespective of the state's position.
Call it the National Guard.
How does Tuolumne County survive under that?
Yeah, I
They
don't
buy
know.
their water from Oakdale. That's my big nightmare, that we can get it from Stockton East.
Okay, Larry, anything further?
No.
Okay, thank you. Jeffrey Diamond, Director of Administrative Services.
Jeffrey Meyer.
Jeffrey Meyer. Too many diamonds.
Larry wants to answer this too.
Morning, Mr. President, members of the board. This probably could have been brought up under Finance Committee, but we can address it now. At the last Finance Committee meeting, we talked about having a Finance Committee meeting at the end of this month to review the draft of the fiscal year 13-14 audit. That audit is not yet complete. There's still work being done on it, so it will not be ready in time to have a meeting next week. So we'll probably just bring it to the full board on November 12th like we have done in the past, and just bring it to your full board for approval, presentation and approval. So it does not, I don't have any other items on the, that are pending that we need to address that can't be rolled over to a future meeting. So I just wanted to let you know that there will be no meeting in October for the Finance Committee meeting.
Thank you, sir. Charles Palmer, District Engineer. Good morning.
Morning. Engineering department is working on several projects that I've mentioned before. The Evans Pass Reach 3A project, Big Trees South Zone Redwood Tank replacement project. We're working on the Wilseyville West Point consolidation project. This morning I just wanted to maybe recap a couple of projects that have some recent activity. I know it's been a long while since we've talked about the Prop 84 West Point Water System Improvement Project, but we just completed the final completion report that was submitted to the state on that project. And they were holding retention payment about $73,500 until we completed that report, so that's been submitted. We received a total of we'll have received a total of $1,471,000 in grant funding for the Prop 84 project that replaced the transmission main on Winton Road and the distribution lines on Main Street in West Point. The result of that is including also that helped leverage some grant funds from USDA, which enabled us to do quite a bit more work on the system up there. Including the replacement of the Bummerville tank, Redwood tank there. And the end result of that is, we have some kind of report, some water savings. We have this issue of the unaccounted for water. And in a normal year, we were seeing about 12 million gallons a year of unaccounted for water. And in the 9 months of this year, from January through September, we only have 3.25 million gallons of unaccounted for water. So as Bill's been up here talking about how much less water we're using in West Point. A lot of that is, conservation efforts, and as well as we've got a lot less unaccounted for water now than we did before. So it's, and the DWR and UMRA wanted us to achieve a 10% reduction in unaccounted for water. That was one of the project goals. And we did go from about 22% down to about 10%. So we are meeting our goals on that project. We still have to continue reporting to UMRA and DWR for a 10-year period on the project. So our first report will be due after the beginning of the year. So, and then the second project I wanted to kind of highlight was the West Point Wilseyville consolidation project. Bill Purley helped us obtain a $200,000 plan grant from Clean Water State Revolving Fund. And we have to complete that planning work by the end of the year, and our final date for reimbursement is March 2015. And the project's goals are to consolidate the West Point and Wilseyville treatment plants. As you know, the Wilseyville treatment plant is a fairly small facility, and so the idea is to consolidate that with the West Point, the larger West Point plant, to help us with some of the permitting issues. Those permits, the Wilseyville permit was issued in 1998. The West Point permit was issued in 93, and those are due for updating. We'll be updating those under the new, recently adopted general, in September 23rd, 14, the recently adopted general waste discharge permit for small domestic wastewater systems that have monthly flow of less than 100,000 gallons per day. So, and, you know, we're, of course, every time you go back to the regional board to get your permitted update, they pretty much turn over every stone and make you prove that your facility is operating within the specified limits, you have adequate storage, and all those good things. So anyway, and we will be submitting the construction grant application for the next phase of the work in December or January. We hope to have that done and submitted. So that's all I have to report. Thank you. Yeah.
This might be a Teresa question. I was just curious how the permit process is going as far as dredging the mill pond in Arnold.
That is, you know, that's a different type of permit. That's a Army Corps permit, and there's probably a 401 permit, which is through the regional board. Can't recall if it's been submitted. We've been in correspondence with the Army Corps for sure. I'm not sure what the status of the final application is on that and if it's been approved yet, but it's kind of an ongoing effort. I mean, I think Bill Purley would admit that it's a little more involved than he maybe realized initially, because there's a lot of vegetation up there to clear. The CAL FIRE's been up there, you know, clearing all kinds of vegetation and mounds, and anybody that's been up there has seen all the mounds of cut vegetation that are piled up there. So it's still a work in progress, but
I'm curious, as it gets into fall, I understand that we're going to use the bypass in order to keep water out of it, and I'm wondering about the work necessary in order to get that done before storms.
it's not a functional bypass. I can't see us doing anything before this winter, you know, so it's to make those kind of, if it's an in-channel kind of bypass, that would probably require Army Corps permitting. So I think it's, maybe we got a little started too late this year to try to get something. It was nice because it was a drought year and everything's all dried out, and that's probably the most optimal time you want to go in and do this kind of a project. But just the hurdles involved in getting the necessary permits and getting a plan together to what we're doing there besides clearing vegetation, and how much sediment's going to be removed, where do you deposit this sediment, all those issues have to be worked out, and you know, so we're still planning on those efforts.
I'm just concerned that we may miss the drought money available for storage. I'd hate to see us lose the opportunity to get free money in order to accomplish that.
That's a good point. We are wondering, okay, great, we got all this planning going. How are we going to pay for the project? You know, and that's probably our most likely source of funding, is some kind of one of these drought projects, grants that are going around now. So that's a good point, well taken.
Okay.
Great. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, just very quickly, have you anticipated some of the environmental issues you're going to run into if you start this project in the spring? Or we're going to have to go back through that whole process again?
That's what we're working on. Yeah, I mean, we realize that, you know, you can't move forward with these projects until you have all the necessary permits. So that's what really, why we're just not running out there with tractors and, you know, cutting down vegetation. We've pushed it to the limit that we can with the clearing. You know, we've, you know, CAL FIRE, they want to make sure that we had permits in place just to even do the vegetation clearing to the extent that we have. So, you know, to actually get in there with tractors and all that and do in-channel work, you got to have the permits to do it. And those take, you know, easily 6 months to obtain.
Yeah, I know, but my only concern was when you sent in your biologist to do an evaluation, it was really off of the busy period for that area. I mean, you know, all of your birds and stuff like that are doing their activities in the spring.
I'm not even sure that they're finished with they'd have to do a frog survey, and I'm not even sure they've fully completed that yet. And those documents we actively have a culture resources archaeologist working on that project. We have a biologist working on the project. We've got, you know, 3 or 4 different environmental specialists working on that project, working on the permit and all the necessary documentation.
Okay. Thank you, Charles.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see Bill Purley here today. Anyone reporting on his behalf? Okay, we're going to move on to item 9. Excuse me, board reports, information, future agenda items. Start with Mr. Dooley. Director Dooley, got anything to report?
No.
Director Dean?
In the interest of a record, no.
Okay, I am going to request a future agenda item. Spoke with Cliff Edson, our county supervisor for District 1. He's got a Calaveras County Watershed Management Pilot Program. CCWMP is, and he'd like to give us a presentation on what he's got going forward. I'd like to set this up for the November 12th regular board meeting. And that's all I have to report. Director Davidson.
I'm just reading the Valley Springs News here today, and this has kind of been a little bit of a buzz that's going around, and I'm curious as to what our involvement, if any. I'm assuming we've had very little or no involvement, but Valley Springs Public Utility District looks like they're considering an $8 million sewer plant relocation, 6 of which they're hoping to be grant funded, and $2 million of which they're hoping to get a USDA loan to effectively move their secondary treated effluent out to the Cove property and build a facility out there. And it says here that they spent $415,000 with a planning grant with the state, California State Water Board, to seek alternatives. The 3 alternatives that were identified, along with doing nothing, says that they were improving the existing plant, shifting wastewater treatment to Calaveras County Water District, and relocating and rebuilding the plant. It says the study, is Peter still here? This will get him riled up. It says the study was completed at no cost to the ratepayers, which always cracks me up. But it said moving and rebuilding the plant to modern standards proved to be the most promising and least expensive option to the ratepayers, according to the evaluation. I guess my question is, have we seen this? Did we play a role in it?
I know that Bill gave input to, I think it was Gary, Gio, and Matt that handled that report. I know Bill was in contact with them, providing them information on our alternative.
Can I get a copy of the report?
See if we can get it.
I mean, I just think that there's a significant opportunity there, because as I understand the Valley Springs plant, it's a secondary facility. It has flooded before. It definitely has issues. They have 400 ratepayers, in the neighborhood of 400 ratepayers. So I'm just curious as to how they came up with the cost evaluations of building a whole new treatment facility for 400 ratepayers. So I'm curious.
I was at a LAFCO meeting a couple months ago, and this item was being discussed. Regionalization was considered. I did speak with Matt from Weber Gio at that meeting, and he actually was presenting it to LAFCO when they were considering it at the time. And the cost associated with a regionalization or a shared with CCWD would have been much more expensive than the alternative.
How's that
I
possible?
don't see how that's possible.
And again, I haven't seen the report, but I'm sure it's available.
Calculates out with 400 people to $20,000 per connection.
If it was, and that's the thing that I think is important that we have to realize is, the component, the La Fontana sewer facility, and I don't want to get into a big debate about this, probably we should have an agenda item, but we need to be reviewing the La Fontana sewer capacity charge. Because one of the biggest components of the La Fontana, of the connection charge for La Fontana sewer was the purchasing 240 acres to do spray field. We don't operate that way anymore. The golf course is taking the effluent, so we don't have to purchase that same amount of property. So I believe once we reevaluate that La Cantina sewer plan, that capacity charge would go down. But regardless, it's that if they paid the full boat right now, that's 6 million as opposed to 8 million.
And I had the same thought, the same questions at that time, and this is why I brought it up. I actually asked a question at the LAFCO meeting, and Mr. Hospital from Weber Geo did address that issue. And again, I haven't seen the report, and I do encourage you to.
Yeah, I'd just like to see the report and see if we can perhaps comment more.
Could you make that available to all the board members? I'd like to see it too, because Jeff brings an important point up, and we need, I mean, just for efficiency's sake, we need to be looking at all the regional options we
Well,
have.
yeah, because then you didn't get into the operation aspect of it, and that's all, you know.
It's a whole nother ballgame.
you know.
Anything else in the Valley Springs news this morning?
Tense time on Baldwin.
Okay. Did you do anything about the Giants game last night in there?
No.
Director Stump.
First, I'd like to announce that Mountain Counties has got DWR to bring a workshop up to El Dorado Irrigation District. And this is a workshop in order to try and help agencies, tribes, everyone involved with the IRWM process. This is really tough for some of the smaller agencies to go through all the DWR rules associated with the getting money through the IRWM. So the workshop should be really good. Initially, there was only going to be 4 of them in California, and we've got this one. So they're being very, very nice to the mountain area. So I wanted to comment and get as many people that are interested to that meeting. I'd like to get that in the newspaper so that all the smaller agencies recognize that this is really important for them and their future of their agency.
That's a webinar, correct?
No, they're gonna be there. DWR is gonna show up.
You probably got an email this morning.
I did, I saw it, and it had to do with a webinar that they're planning.
Yeah,
So maybe they'll be, live and
Yeah, we've got the DWR
Televised.
folks gonna be there. On October 15th, Mountain Counties had Innovative Water Technologies for California. Very well attended. A lot of state agencies wanted to see what was going on, so we had a huge number of them. My favorite 3 were hydropower generation opportunities, controlling sediment in mountain recreation areas, and reducing water yield with regional water storage possibilities. The last one was the best for me. Last thing I want to talk about is I attended Blue Lake Springs board meeting. Very interesting in terms of what they're trying to do with their wells. I think they've done either 6 or 8 wells so far, and they only have 2 that are actually producing for them, although they're not connected to their system. So far, they see about 125 gallons per minute that they've been able to achieve out of about 350 to 375 that they're hoping to gain. Couple of issues with it is that the wells that are not producing, the cost is ranging somewhere from about $8,000 to $25,000, depending on whether they even drill the hole. But they've got about $450,000 in each well before they're connected to their system. So it's not an inexpensive process for these folks. Depending on what they're going to achieve, they're going to have to find some new locations for wells. But the real takeaway for me was they're also interested in talking to UWPA as far as purchasing water. I found that interesting, since that's basically taking water from Hunters into Blue Lake Springs, which would probably be just back of the envelope kind of calculating a $10 million prospect. I'm puzzled by that.
They have to build a treatment facility.
They'd have to build a treatment facility, and they have to pump it for about 3 to 5 miles, depending on how they do it. And since they don't have any inland domain capabilities, I'm not sure how they get a line from Hunters to Blue Lakes. So they've got some hurdles they're trying to get over. It doesn't seem like it's real simple. And it sounds to me like they've already used up their best locations for wells. So this is not an easy thing for Blue Lake Springs right now. This is a real tough time. The other comment that I was going to make is they were waiting for a meeting with Vern, and I just got an email saying that they've already hired Vern's replacement. So I'm not sure how that's going to take place, and I'd like to invite the new general manager, UWPA, to come to one of our board meetings or have a get-together. I'm interested in meeting the new GM.
Remember, they've done it before.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving on to item 10, next board meeting. We do have a meeting in November, Wednesday, November 12th, 2014, 9 a.m., our regular board meeting in this room. And we're going to take a quick break here before we move into closed session. Thank you very much.
You gonna read that stuff, or you gonna wait?
Oh, and the closed session items, I should read those for everyone's interest. 11A, conference with real property negotiators, Government Code, Section 54956.8, APN 010-009-001. Item 11B, public employment general manager recruitment, under Government Code, Section 54957. And item 11C, conference with legal counsel, existing litigation, Government Code, Section 54956.9A, La Contenta Investors LTD versus CCWD, Superior Court Case Number 11CV37713. Thank you.